Hi, my name is David Bauer, and this is my video presentation for my instructional design lesson using the EDCI process. I'm going to start right in because the directions for the assignment said to kind of keep the videos pretty short. My purpose statement: students will display comprehension of Cold War cause and key term by creating a digital story. So there will be, when this unit is implemented in class, the kids will actually have to take key terms from the Cold War and put them into a digital story. For the purpose of this lesson, I broke that into just a smaller subsection of the unit where students used vocabulary terms I gave them and had to create a digital story. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of skip ahead to that lesson to kind of show what the kids were doing for the implementation of the unit for this class. For implementation in this class, I actually had students completing an outline and a storyboard. So this would be a way that they could display that they actually do understand the meaning of the key terms, and they're actually looking at what direction their digital story is going to go. So as you can see by the concept map that I created, they create a story outline, they make captions and illustrations for their storyboard, and then this was a step that I didn't have kids do because they were not going on to create the digital story as a part of this lesson, but when implementing this in real life, they would be selecting the software that's appropriate for telling their digital story. Now, the unit that I would implement in a real classroom would use Cold War key terms. As you're going to see in one of the examples, though, the students that I had practice this lesson, they actually used terms that any student would know: teacher, student, classroom, detention, those types of things, so that they wouldn't have to spend time looking up vocabulary definitions since they were just volunteers for me. Here you can see kind of a rundown of the materials that I would be using when I implemented this lesson. There were different surveys that the students had to take. There was a video that students had to take through EDCI, they watched it, and then they had to answer certain questions. It gave them a good understanding of what storyboarding is and why it is important in the story writing process. And through the post survey that I had students fill out, I found that the kids really liked it, and that really did give them a good understanding of what storyboarding is. I'm now going to show you the lesson plan and the materials that I created for the implementation of this lesson. This lesson plan is what an instructor would use. It outlines and details the goals, the standards that are used, the materials that are used, and then it goes into showing what procedures would take place. Basically what happens is the teacher kind of opens the unit by giving just a real short lecture on what the kids will be doing. The kids watch a digital EDUCANN video where they can see what storyboarding is. They create a digital story outline of their own, which they submit to me through Google Drive, and then they create a storyboard where they actually draw pictures, they write captions, and they turn that into me. Once they were all finished, I also had the students answer some questions verbally, and then they had to complete a kind of a post survey where they could give me feedback on what they had done. Here you can see the example outline that I gave. I know I'm going kind of fast, but if you need to, you can pause to read through things. The outline shows words using whistle, referee, football, flag, and goal line, so pretty common football terms that the kids would hopefully know, and that way they can look at the example, but I'm not using the words that they would be using. The words that they had to use were teacher, student, detention, and classroom. So this was a way for me to give an example with terms that they would know, but not actually give them an outline that they could use. So here then is the outline that they filled out. I gave them to this in a Google Doc, they typed into it, and then they shared it back to me. The next example that I gave them is an actual filled out storyboard. Again, this is using the football terms, but they were going to be using the other school terms that I gave them for implementing. The storyboard worksheet that I created has some questions that they have to answer, and they answer these and turn them in before they complete their storyboard, just so that I can see that they know exactly what they need to be doing. And then they have a blank storyboard that they have to fill out. This is the final product that they turned in. The last thing that students were responsible for before they started the lesson, here is the pre-assessment that I gave them, where they just told me if they knew what storyboarding was and what it was used for. And what it could be useful for. A lot of kids didn't do very well on this just because they had no idea what a storyboard was. The post-assessment, I tried to focus a little bit more on what the kids thought of the lesson, things that they would have changed. And one thing that I noticed after I was all finished, I had not put a place for students to add their name. In the future, I don't know if I would or not, just because it focuses so much on what they thought of the lesson and not what they learned from the lesson necessarily. I was kind of okay with not having their names, just because I think I got a little bit more candid feedback from them. So I am kind of up in the air on a survey like that if I would put their names on it in the future. The last piece that I created then was a lesson response from my expert. This was a Google form that I shared to them, and it gives them just a lot of different places where they can actually fill in and type on their own. Anytime I'm creating a survey, I try to do that just so that people have a chance not only to give a numerical response, but also any place where they can give suggestions or type things in. I always feel like that's helpful for me to get that feedback. The last thing that I'll show you are some of the changes I made to my lesson based on the post-evaluation that my expert and students gave me. First of all, the students didn't really understand what they were doing to start the lesson. They didn't know why they were doing it, even though they had volunteered for it. So in the future, I would just try to make that a bigger part of guiding the students to understanding the goals. I don't think it helped that I also took a lesson from basically day 7 of a 2-week unit, and they were starting with that, so it hadn't really built off itself. The same with my objectives. Students really weren't sure what the objectives were to start, and so I had to give extra explanation there. Instructional strategies, one of the problems I had, I shared the outline document to students and it was editable by them. So I had one student that changed the document before other students were able to look at it. So in the future I would share a view-only copy with them, and then they could create their own copy to be able to change that and resubmit it to me. That way I'm not having people accidentally change someone's document. One other change that I noted that I've already kind of talked about was my post-assessment survey. Again, I don't know if I would put a name with that in the future or not, because I did feel like I got some very open responses with students not having their names associated with those. One of the feedback that I also got from my expert was information to the facilitator as well there. It wasn't really obvious to the facilitator exactly why the students were completing this lesson, or that the lesson was a smaller part of a bigger unit. And so that's one of the things that I would change in the future as well. So that is the end of my video. Thank you very much for your time, and for any suggestions that you have that you could make in ways that I could strengthen and improve my unit. I would like to thank you in advance also for any feedback or suggestions that you can give.